Good evening. Thank you all very much for joining us, both here in the room as well as virtually. My name is Kristen Schrader-King, and I'm here from the World Bank. And it's a pleasure for us to be here during the 79th United Nations General Assembly for this press briefing on Denmark's financial contribution and commitment to the International Development Association's 21st replenishment, or IDA 21, the World Bank's Fund for Low-Income Countries. We are joined by Ms. Mette Frederiksen, Prime Minister of Denmark, and Mr. Ajay Banga, President of the World Bank Group. And with that, let me welcome Prime Minister Frederiksen to please come to the podium for her remarks, followed by Mr. Banga. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just come out of the Summit of the Future, where the UN member states, as you know, will agree on the pact for the future. A pact in which we agree to establish a more fair international system. And that is quite a good bridge to the conversation we're going to have right now, because our world, our common world, is facing multiple crises, and the development countries are the ones who are hit hardest. This called, of course, for global action to accelerate progress. We need to reform the international financial systems and architecture. I think we need a modern system that can deliver financial needed to implement the Paris Agreement, of course, and also the SDGs. This will be my key message at the Summit for the Future. The World Bank Group has already embarked on a significant reform. Thank you for your leadership on all that. I think the bank is delivering on becoming both a better and a bigger bank, increasing its lending capacity to many different countries. The World Bank's Fund for the Poorest Countries, as you just said, IDA, needs to be very clear more money. And of course, Denmark is ready to meet that task. We are going to deliver on the request. And today, I am glad, I am proud to announce our intention to provide a 40% increase. I think this is necessary, and I ask all donors, old and new ones, to follow the example, because I mean, we have passed some very difficult years, and no matter if we look at the old problems or new problems with first the pandemic and after that inflation and energy crisis, the poorest countries have been hit the hardest. So I think this is the right time to step up and to scale up, all of us, and to really support you in the work you are doing on the necessary reforms. So you can count on Denmark, both when it comes to the concrete and necessary tasks, but also in supporting the reforms. And I think this is, it's not only necessary for the countries who are in need of it, but it's also necessary if we want to stick together as one world and as one global community. So thank you also for giving me the possibility to talk here today.
Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister, and thank you all for being here. You know, across the emerging markets, there are vast natural resources. There is fertile land, and there is a growing and strong spirit of entrepreneurship. And most of it, remember, it's underlined by the fact that we have a favorable demographic profile in those countries. But on the other side of that picture is a set of well-defined challenges that very often eclipses these blessings. That, I think, is the backdrop that we all face. And we are at a crossroad. The path we choose will determine the future of generations to come. Do we accept, on the one hand, a status quo a future where millions remain trapped in poverty, where the fundamental human right of access to electricity is elusive, where healthcare accessibility is inadequate, and where infrastructure is insufficient to support what I think is the potential of these countries? Or do we seize the opportunity to unlock the potential of these places and these young people, ushering in an era of prosperity and progress? That's the question. And I think we believe the answer is clear. We can, and frankly, we must help to chart a course towards that brighter future. And the starting point of that is a well-resourced IDA, the International Development Association, and of course, with that is the World Bank's knowledge. This is not a pipe dream. We've seen success stories in countries that took advantage of IDA over the last many years. They embraced good governance, they invested in education and infrastructure, they fostered an environment where businesses can thrive, and today, 36 countries have successfully graduated from IDA, 12 of them since 2000. Just so you understand, countries like South Korea, countries like China, countries like Turkey, these were all IDA recipients. Now, IDA has not been the only reason for their progress. A great deal is what they did, but they used IDA as the methodology to give them the wind in their sails to move in the right direction. That's what this conversation is about. Each of these, this transformative power of development assistance done right, is very important. That's the promise of development that has brought us together. And I think Denmark's deep and unwavering commitment to creating a better world is what the Prime Minister is displaying. It's a commitment to their power of multilateralism. You heard her close with one world. We're kind of in it together. Madam Prime Minister, your decision to increase Denmark's contribution to IDA by 40% plus, it's not just a financial gesture. I appreciate that enormously, but I think it's about leadership. It's about your country showing the bold and innovative leadership that pushes all of us to think bigger, to act faster, and to dream of a future where no one is left behind. Your country has a focus on climate. You care about gender equality. You care about sustainable growth. I think that echoes with where we stand for IDA. Your new Africa strategy shines a light on what's possible when we invest in the future of a continent that holds so much promise with its young people. I think the future of developing countries and their people is not predetermined. It is a choice between stagnation and progress, between despair and hope. If more countries follow Denmark's path, not of least resistance, but of greatest potential, we will be well on our way to a more prosperous future on a livable planet for all of us. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take some questions with the Madam Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister and President Banga. With that, I will open it up for questions. And for those of you in the room, please introduce yourselves. There are microphones next to your seats that you can use. And for those of you online, we have a chat function. So please put your questions in the chat, and we'll pick them up from there. Thank you very much. Opening up now. Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. Sir, I'm Ayush Garg from Yarn Express. It's a national newspaper in India. My question is, what is the vision for IDA going on? Do you have any plans to expand into new territories and geographies? And second, with the advance of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, is IDA also looking at providing investment or for such new opportunities for the least developed countries?
Thank you for that. I mean, IDA is already, we were just talking outside right now, IDA is already working in 75 countries. And that's kind of the countries that are at the most disadvantaged edge of the economic pyramid. And that's where we are focused. As I said, 36 countries have already graduated. A number of them are now very generous donors themselves. In the 75 that we are in, we work across a range of things, but think of it as everything from food security to gender equality and the access to opportunities for women in those areas, all the way to jobs for young people. You cannot get jobs for young people without investing in healthcare, in education and skilling, and in the right kind of climate-resilient infrastructure. You cannot get jobs for young people without creating all that investment together. That's where our focus is. The big benefit of IDA is that every dollar that somebody like Denmark gives to IDA, because we enjoy a AAA rating as an institution, thanks to our donors, we're able to go to the bond market and get private money to leverage that $1 up to 3.5 to 4 times in the case of IDA. And that's the multiplier and leverage effect that prime ministers and leaders and governments want to take advantage of when they dedicate money. It's $1 for 4. That's the power of what we are doing here. Your question on AI. I think AI is a critical plus in many ways for many locations, for many things we could do together. I will say that AI it can be a big challenge as well. If you're an emerging market country where you don't have computing power, you don't have electricity, you don't have data in large amounts kept in a way that is safe and simple and secure, then your ability to take advantage of the AI revolution in the coming decade is stunted. We have to find a way to help such countries participate in that revolution. One of those ways, the starting point, frankly, is electricity. Today I've participated in events, some of which are going to be funded from IDA. We are committed to reach 300 million Africans, along with the African Development Bank, by 2030 with access to affordable energy, mostly renewable. 600 million Africans today do not have any electricity. And so the idea is to change that calculus and change that methodology and change the outcome by getting at least half of them to have access to electricity. That will take tens of billions of dollars from IDA. It'll take money from the governments themselves. It'll take effort from the private sector, all of which we're trying to work on with partners like Rockefeller and others. So that's kind of to think about AI in a bigger way than just AI.
Please.
Hi, I'm Alex Newman with the New American Magazine. And the wealthier countries, of course, didn't get wealthy with money from wealthier countries. They got wealthy through free markets and things like this. And I'm wondering how much work the World Bank is doing to understand how the wealthier countries got wealthy to begin with and to encourage the poorer countries to follow those same ideas, create those same kind of institutions rather than have taxpayer subsidized loans and aid and development funding.
It's interesting you asked this in front of one of the prime ministers of a country that is very determined that in the actual implementation of things we do, we take best practices of everything from domestic resource mobilization. You cannot, the best things that these wealthy countries did was to invest back in their citizenry by creating the right ability for them to do so, which is through the right policies on taxation, on transparency, on things to do with educating and healthcare of their own people. That is the thing that happened in their time. Yes, it was free market policies too, but it was supported with strategic investment. Even in the United States, where we're sitting right now, if the government had not invested in basic things, the private sector could not have built on them. The internet, GPSs, these come from government investment. You look at the medical research that goes on in this country, a lot of it is with government investment. You need both sides to work together. The challenge that the developing world has is we're in a very difficult time in their lives. If you think about economic growth right now, while the world seems to be having some economic growth, you know that the developing world is not as well off as they used to be even before COVID, even today. A number of them are putting more of their budget into repaying loans overseas to creditors than they are into healthcare and education. That was not the case 30, 40 years ago in what is now the developed world. Just 15 years ago, the net surplus money that went to the emerging markets was over 250 billion. In the last few years, the net negative going out to repay debt is to the order of almost 50 billion. The equation is very different. You have to cut your coat to suit your cloth. And I think we're all in it together. And what Denmark and other countries are demonstrating is the desire to take everybody along at a certain level, but not without a sense of responsibility for what those countries need to do well. You hear me talk about good governance? That's what I mean. So, Madam Prime Minister.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions from the room? If If not, we have a question online about what does IDA do in terms of climate change, please.
So IDA, as of now, if you look at the latest IDA, almost 48% of IDA's outlays have gone to fighting climate change, but the vast majority of that has gone towards adaptation, meaning not so much for future mitigation of energy emissions, although that is there, but the vast majority first goes towards adaptation, because after all, the countries where we are putting this money to work are those that have a very low percentage of the total energy consumption in the world. And therefore, they are feeling the downstream impact of the manner in which growth has happened over the last 30, 40 years. And so it is climate financing, but it's dedicated a little more towards adaptation, a little less towards mitigation. But if you just heard me talk about the 300 million in Africa, that's very committed to renewable energy. Distributed solar energy is one of the big things we're going to do in Africa. What I really want to do, and this is something that is near and dear to most of the developed world, when you put up one of those distributed solar plants, I want to put a cell phone transmission system at the same time. If you do that, in theory, over the coming 7 years, we would not only reach 300 million people for power, we would reach them for including them in the digital world. And to me, I think it's a win-win. It's a 2-for-1, basically.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And with that...
Can I just add one thing?
Oh, please.
I just came back from the Pacific Islands.
Yes.
I went to Fiji and Tuvalu. Tuvalu is a country that is severely challenged by climate. You know, the rising seas. Tuvalu is a country that is at sea level, and the rising seas are beginning to intrude upon all its land and threaten the livelihood of the people who live there. I mean, that's an existential issue. What you can do there is to help them with building up their ports to ensure they can get food, water, and medicine and the like. You can help to build seawalls. You can help, most importantly, their people get a sense of hope through both quality healthcare and skilling and education. So even as some of them are migrating to Australia, they are migrating as productive citizens to a location where they can be a constructive contributor to that society. I think we have to think about adaptation as human adaptation and resilience as much as infrastructure resilience.
I just had a follow-up to what you just said. In terms of distributed solar energy and the concept of putting up mobile, connectivity, are you also looking at technology transfer to those regions in terms of the know-how of how this technology works to enable the future generations under the IDEA program to sustain themselves?
So the World Bank is a money bank, which is what we are discussing here. What nobody really knows more of as us is we're a knowledge bank. And I would put our knowledge bank as being, in some cases, more important even than the money. And the reason for that is, as a country grows in its economic prosperity, our contribution to their budget reduces as a share of their budget, as it should. That's a sign of progress. But then our knowledge is even more valuable at that time to help build that very capacity you're talking about. We have a knowledge bank focused on 5 verticals. People, that's human capital, education and healthcare and social benefit schemes. Second vertical is prosperity. That's domestic resource mobilization, tax policy, marketing policy, trade policies, economic policy, credit for small and business, medium enterprises. The third is planet, climate adaptation, water, biodiversity, food. The fourth is infrastructure. That's the obvious one. And the fifth is digital, which we have put into a separate vertical because it impacts all the others. And I think digital is not just applications. It's digital public infrastructure. And it is AI and its use and the ethics of that use. So it's early days, but the gentleman who runs the Knowledge Bank is actually here. If you find time after the press conference, grab him. He's sitting right there. Axel, get hold of him and you can learn more.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, there's one more question there.
Thank you so much. My name is Inam Tahan. I'm with Associated Press. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us. I have a question about the electricity part. the question is, are you going to work with the government only, or are you going to work construction companies, private sectors, in order to reach this goal within a certain amount of time, and how long? Thank you.
You cannot work with governments only because the delivery of such a dramatic change in energy access requires all players. It requires, of course, the government because you need clarity on regulatory policy, clarity on tariffs, clarity on utilities. You know, we can take that for granted because these governments have been working that well, but you have to be careful to manage utilities and transmission as well as you manage the generators. So clarity on policy, clarity on utilities and transmission, very important. But then beyond that, you also need not only that government participation, you need the private sector to come in. A lot of these distributed solar energy installations I'm talking about are all through the private sector. We've been doing a lot of them already in a number of countries. I've personally visited them in Nigeria, for example. But there's more to do. And so it is a partnership. And it's not only with the private sector, it's also with philanthropy. So the Rockefeller Foundation, the Earth Fund, and others are all stepping up to help in this idea because they can provide money for technical assistance. They can provide the first loss risk that the private sector will need. They can provide concessional capital. So there's a lot, you know, this is going to need all shoulders to the wheel. This is not a simple task that we're taking on.
Just wanted to add some few words. It's almost too easy just to sit here next to you, even though I agree with you. But maybe just to put some few words that one of the reasons why we have decided to increase the amount that we want to donate to IDA is, and I think the discussion today reflect how complicated things are. Everything is interlinked now. And often, you know, when we have political discussions also globally, we often look into one of the sectors. Then we talk about adaptation and climate change and climate financing. And then some other people in another room are talking about health or education or migration or security and then you can continue. But everything is interlinked now.
It's intertwined, that's correct.
And we have to be able to speed up and scale up on all the challenges in front of us at the same time. And therefore the reforms of the World Bank is extremely important because we have the institutions. There is no need of, you know, finding new to find out building up new institutions because we have them already. We just have to ensure that they work for the right purpose and that the amount of money actually reflects the challenges in front of us. And there is still a way to go to walk about that, but hopefully the increased number of money from Denmark and other donors will be helpful in ensuring that we'll find the right solutions.
That you have a table, an agenda to stick to, and we need to move to a photo op right now, please, with a handshake, and then we will close for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.